Whole Bible readers, welcome to week 16. And in this week, we're going to make some really noticeable progress. We're going to move into a different kind of literature. This week, we're going to wrap up the book of Kings, 2 Kings, and then move on to the prophet Isaiah. Well, let's see where we are, first of all, in the book of Kings. As we're closing out 2 Kings, Judah is falling apart. Of course, northern Israel has already been taken captive. Judah is going to be delivered from the Assyrian aggression after Israel falls, but because of that, they're actually going to become overconfident, thinking that the temple is kind of a divine good luck charm, that God will never let the city of Jerusalem fall. Well, Hezekiah is the godly king at the time that all that happens. His son Manasseh is just terrible, an awful pagan. Ammon is not much better, but he's very brief reign. Then we get King Josiah, who is the last godly king that we're going to see. He attempts to initiate a reform. In fact, he makes a lot of progress with that, but it all falls apart when a prophet tells him, don't go into battle the way you want to, and he does, and he gets himself killed. And after that, we have a succession of 4 kings, all of them, very weak, very compromising, and we're just accelerating towards the Babylonians finally taking Jerusalem, destroying it, destroying the temple, and taking the people of Judah captive, just as the prophets had warned, just as Moses had said generations before. Well, is there any hope in this situation? 2 Kings is going to end with this very, very curious scene. Jehoiakim, who had been one of these kings who was taken into captivity and was abused, and all kinds of terrible things happened to him. He's going to be released from prison and is going to be allowed to sit at the king's table. It's as if to say, God is doing something here. Maybe there is hope. And of course there is, because God has promised he's going to restore the people of Judah after exile. Well, then we're going to go to the book of Isaiah, and you're going to think, why are we skipping around like this? Well, it depends on what you mean by skipping around. In the Hebrew Bible, unlike our English Bibles, the books that we're reading are arranged as the former prophets and the latter prophets. Now, the former prophets are the books of Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings, the ones that they're finishing up this week. Modern scholars call these Deuteronomistic history. Long word meaning history interpreted from the perspective of the book of Deuteronomy, or the perspective of the prophets, and that's why the Hebrew scholars call these the former prophets. Well, those are followed by, what do you expect? The latter prophets. Well, who are those latter prophets? Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and what in the Hebrew Bible we call the Book of the 12, or in the English Bible we call the minor prophets. We can sometimes call these the writing prophets. This is the message of these prophets as it was written down. So we're going to be moving into the prophets who prophesied before Israel's exile. And then we'll deal with the exilic and post-exilic prophets later, but we'll make a couple of detours along the way as well to pick up other literature in the Old Testament. Well, what are we going to see in the book of Isaiah as we're getting into that? Well, here's some things to watch for. First of all, watch for these persistent warnings of coming exile. Isaiah wants the people of Judah to know, listen, exile is coming because we have been unfaithful. But within that, he says, there is a faithful remnant, those who have not bowed to idols, those who have sought God's protection and forgiveness. And these God is going to bring through, though it's going to be a very, very difficult situation for them. Now, Isaiah's central chapter is Isaiah 6, which we'll read, where we see Isaiah's vision of God, where God is revealed to him as the Holy One of Israel. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. And Isaiah is going to say, I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. He doesn't separate himself as part of the remnant from the sinfulness of the nation as a whole. He knows he's a sinner too. Well, God forgives him and God commissions him, but Isaiah cannot let go of that idea of God's holiness, which is expressed in, as we will see in these chapters as well, judgment for all the nations, even Israel, even Judah, even the nations that God is using like Assyria and Babylon as his scourges against them. No, all nations are under judgment because they are unfaithful to the Lord. But in the midst of this, God is promising his promised king. He's promising the great son of David, who we've thought about before, who we've seen promised, who will bring the fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham to bless all the nations. Indeed, the promise that goes clear back to the garden, that the seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. All right, this is some great reading we're doing here. A lot of people would say Isaiah is the greatest literary artist of the Old Testament. But, we're going to read some Psalms too, and they're pretty awesome as well. We'll be thinking about how we celebrate Israel's history, how we rely on God, all of those themes that come about again and again in the Psalms. Happy reading here in week 16, and if you're on time, Merry Christmas.